Okay, looking at this problem, find the inverse of the function and then find the domain and the range of the inverse. So we've got x equals negative 2 times the absolute value of y minus 5. So our first step always is to, if I have f of x or g of x, change it to y. Well, I already have my x and my y, so I'm good there. Second thing to find the inverse is to switch the x and the y. The way that this function is already set up makes it nice, because if I switch my x and my y, I get y equals negative 2 times the absolute value of x minus 5. Next thing I need to do is solve for y. Well, this is what makes it nice. Look, it's already solved for y. So this is my function. Y equals negative 2 absolute value of x minus 5. This is my inverse. Now, let's talk about the domain, which is all my x values, and let's talk about my range, which is my y values. Absolute value just means what is the distance that number is from 0 on the number line. Okay? Any number has a positive distance. So absolute value just means to take the positive of the number. Absolute value of negative 2 is positive 2, because it's 2 spaces from 0. Again, distance is not ever negative. The absolute value of 5 is 5, because it is 5 places from 0 on the number line. So, my domain, are there any restrictions on plugging in a number for x? No, there's not. I can plug in any number. I can plug in 0. Absolute value of 0 is 0. I can plug in positive numbers. I can find the absolute value of all positive numbers. I can plug in negative numbers. I can find the absolute value of all negative numbers. They just become positive. So there's no restriction on what I can plug in for x. So my domain is all real numbers, or if you want to write it interval notation, negative infinity to positive infinity. My range, though, may have a restriction. Okay, so let's talk about if I plug in, let's talk about positive numbers. And we may just need to plug in some and just kind of see what happens. So let's just do a little XY chart and see. If I plug in positive numbers, let's do 1, let's do 3, let's do 5. I'm just plugging in some numbers to see what happens. Okay, if I plug in 1, the absolute value of 1 is positive 1, times negative 2 is negative 2, minus 5 gives me negative 7. If I plug in 3, absolute value of 3 is 3, times negative 2 is negative 6, minus 5 is negative 11. If I plug in 5, absolute value of 5 is 5, times negative 2 is negative 10, minus 5 is negative 15. I can keep plugging in any positive numbers. They can be even, they can be odd, that does not matter. There's a pattern here. I'm still going to get out negative numbers. Okay. What if I plug in 0? What's going to happen? Let's see. If I plug in 0, absolute value of 0 is 0, times negative 2 is negative 2, absolute value of 0 is 0, times negative 2 is 0, minus 5 is negative 5. I still get out a negative number. Okay, well, let's go to the other side of 0, and let's plug in some negative numbers and see what happens. Negative 1, negative 2, just say negative 3 really quick. Absolute value of negative 1 is positive 1, times negative 2 is negative 2, minus 5 is still negative 7. So even when I plugged in the negative, I got out a negative, because that absolute value changed that negative 1 right back into that 1 that I've already used. If I plug in negative 2, absolute value of negative 2 is positive 2, times negative 2 is negative 4, minus 5 is negative 9. Then if I plug in negative 3, absolute value of negative 3 is 3, times negative 2 is negative 6, minus 5 gives me negative 11. So if we look at all of these y values that we've gotten, what do we see about all of them? They're all negative. No matter what number I plug in for x, I will not get out a positive number. Okay? So I know then that my range is negative numbers. Now, where do I start at, though, with my negative numbers? Well, that's going to be right here. That's where I'm going to start. This minus 5 up in this problem shifted this absolute value down 5 units. So my range is actually starts at -5 and it goes to -infinity, everything down below it, if you're writing in that notation. Or we can say that x is less than or equal, or excuse me, not x, because we're talking about range. Y is less than or equal to -5, everything below -5. I hope this helps.